What's up, YouTube family? Lou here with another Godlike Collectibles video. This week I'm taking a break from If I Can Only Have One, and maybe I'll do it for this week coming up. But today, also before I get started, shout out to my man Drew. Um, he sent out my display, racks, and I hooked it up. Got all my Vic Powers up there on the top. And then some Godlike Collectible slabs down here. Really digging it. Still got work to do on this section of my basement here. I'm going to be putting some stuff up. Probably these things here are going to be on the wall, hung up and not there. And I'll probably end up displaying either some figures of baseball players or maybe some cards. I don't know what I'm going to do yet there. But in any case, today I just wanted to make this video. I've been watching a lot of videos lately, and today I was watching Mangini's video, and he was mentioning about, are there any collectors left? And, also saw the video with the 4 collectors where they had baseball collector Mike and midlife cards Greg, and they were talking, and it just seems like a lot of content lately has been revolving around grading, and and I think it's just getting to the point where it's becoming a repetitive thing. I truly believe that at the end of the day, man, if you're happy with the way you collect, just be happy. That's it. You know what I mean? It's like, it almost feels like we have this thing where we're telling people almost how to collect. And, that if they got the old label, that card is not as good as the new label cards. And, that it's not valid, the grade and things of that nature, and the PSA set registry and all this. And it's always been a thing, right? But I feel like that grading sports cards, has become somewhat an obsession now. God forbid you get a card that isn't, graded, and you're like, because it's not valuable enough or whatever. And I think I get that a lot of people want to have their cards be worth something. And I get it. You know what I mean? Like, I guess for the future. But something that Mangini said made a lot of sense. He's like, do I really want to depend on my sports cards to leave as an inheritance? You know what I mean? Like, and then it's like the way he was saying, like, they're gonna get stuck with all of this. You know what I mean? Like, I can't picture my wife having to deal with selling all these things out. A part of me, would want my collection to go to people who appreciate collecting and want to collect the things that I collected. You know what I mean? And not so much on the monetary value side of it, of what she can make, but basically, on how these pieces can continue to live on. Because, like I always said, I felt like me collecting these players and these cards and stuff like that is more like me preserving the culture, especially with my collection. I don't have $1,000 cards, but I have cards that mean something to me and my background, my culture, being Hispanic, and a lot of Hispanic players that have played this game that perhaps people forget about because they're not Hall of Famers, or maybe they forget about because they're not talked about as much. We could look at a lot of big collectors on YouTube, and a lot of them show a lot of the same cards, right? They show the same players over and over and over again, right? We got, the Willie Mazes, the Mickey Mantles, all the top dogs, and that's great, and it's cool to look at, especially if you haven't seen them. But you know, the game is so much more bigger than just those players. Yeah, those players were great, but you know, there's also other players within the history of the game that have made impacts in different cultures, different races, and and those are the things that I think about. You know what I mean? You know, like for example, Brian Doyle. You know what I mean? He was a Yankee second baseman back in the late '70s when they won the title. And I remember my dad telling me a story that Willie Randolph had gotten hurt for the playoffs or the World Series or something like that, and Brian Doyle stepped in for him, and he played a major role in winning. Brian Doyle we really don't hear of. Why? Because he's not a superstar player or all-star player, so we don't really know much about him. But these are guys that you know I've heard stories on, especially when it's passed down from a parent. Like, if your father is passing down this knowledge to you about certain players, it kind of piques your interest into knowing more than just the big names in the sport. Um, and and the reason I don't even know why I'm making this video. I guess I have thoughts on my mind right now, and I wanted to talk about this whole situation that is grading sports cards become like an addiction or an obsession, because it seems like everybody won't buy a card unless you know they 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 won't buy a card unless it's graded. And I don't know, it's I guess it's the investor mentality in people. But I don't know. I just enjoy my cards, whether they're graded or not. I got a bunch of cards, like I said, that are ungraded and top loaders, and I have a lot of cards that are graded in one touches, and cards that are in different type of slabs. You know what I mean? Like my own slabs that here on the bottom, and I got some PSA slabs. I got SGC. I got all the different companies. Um, and it just seems like the same narrative is like, oh, if you want your card to be worth something, then you need to get it in a high grade. Need to get it in a PSA slab, and stuff of that nature. Um, I don't know. And then for like I'm just thinking about it. The what is the purpose of grading your card, right? It's basically to protect your cards, and making sure that it's authentic, and and for quality to look nice. I get that, but it's just been such a shift in the culture, in the hobby culture. It became like grading was optional, and now all of a sudden it's become you know it's like almost a necessity now to grade your cards. It's crazy. um so I don't know, you know and then the prices just keep going up with the grading fees. um the shipping, the insurance, the this, the that. Like Mangini was even talking about how they were like sending his cards to get authenticated, the eBay authenticity, and then how they lost the card and all this. It's just like, yo, it's getting ridiculous. Like how much authenticity you need. You know what I mean? If it's already in a PSA slab, then why you need eBay to authenticate the slab? I don't get that. You know what I mean? And it's just that the value is just ridiculous. The funny thing is, there was a card I was looking at a Vic Power card that I wanted, and to me, it was kind of priced kind of high. Because looking at other cards of Vic Power from that particular set, one that sold in a PSA 7, I think was like back in 2024, September 2024. So basically a year ago. And it sold for like $30. The guy wants 120 for it. And it sold for $30 like a year ago. And that was kind of like the last sale of that card in that grade. So I made him an offer like, I don't know, like $50 or something like that. So he came back with like 110 bucks. So I made another offer of 75 to see if maybe he will accept that. I'm waiting for his response. But the thing is like from a year ago, the card that sold for $29 now, I'm gonna get it for 75. You know what I mean? And it's like, dude, like it's crazy. And you know, and the only reason I'm willing to pay that is because I really care about collecting Vic Power cards. He's like, when it comes to my vintage cards, he's my number one collecting guy for vintage. I obviously I got other cards of other stars, but Vic Power is one of the. It's like a special place in my heart for that player, and it just seems like it's just getting crazy with the prices now. You know, and then you got a lot of collectors. They're chasing the perfect score, the 10, you know they're more concerned with the labels and the grades than the actual card and the history of the card, or the history of the player, or maybe even the rarity of the card. Personal meanings of the card. And that's why like I love Vic Power cards, because there's a personal thing behind it. My dad had told me about Vic Power. I would have never known about Vic Power if it wasn't for my pops. You know, and so it's just like things like that it just I don't know. Everybody has now has had an investor mindset now. It's like everybody wants to just think about the investment aspect of it, because now everything is driven by profit and flipping and all these things, and it's just gotten to that point where it's like, yo, it's crazy. It's crazy. And the collectors like myself that don't really care about selling their collection, like I got Don Mattingly's um in PSA 6s and 7s. You know what I mean? Like those cards are probably worth like $5, if that. You know what I mean? And it's only worth $5 because it's in a slab. Otherwise, it would be worth $1 or 50 cents. But I don't care. You know what I mean? It's Don Mattingly. He was my favorite player growing up as a kid. He was the first player I fell in love with when it came to baseball. He's what made me fall in love with baseball. As a Yankee fan growing up in New York. Um, you know, and these inflated prices and the the gem mint cards versus the raw cards, and it just feels like the expectations in collecting become so unrealistic. Um, and sometimes that's why I just buy raw cards. Like I just got these two cards in the mail. I put them in these cases, but I have bought this Cal Riley, right? Rookie card, Bowman Platinum, and I like it. He made history this year as a catcher. I said, you know what? I want to have one of his cards, right? I have another card of his, a Future Stars card of Topps, and then I picked up this Fernando Tatis, right? It's a pink refractor. The All Star Rookie Cups. I'm collecting All Star Rookie Cup cards from different from all. Well, I'm trying to get all of them, because I'm psycho, I guess. I don't know, but beautiful card, and it looks great in this one touch. Like I'm good with that. I don't need to send it out to get graded. I don't need it to be a gem mint 10. I don't need it to be none of that. And when it's my time to go, then yo, whatever happens, happens, bro. Like I like I don't know what to tell you. You know what I mean? Like my wife could give it away to a collector and I'll be okay with that. You know what I mean? Um, I think we emphasize too much on what the cost is. I get so excited when I get a card that I want. And like right now, that Vic Power that I want, like I'm willing to overpay for it, basically paying twice as much than what it's probably worth. Um, but I'm willing to do that because I want the card. Like I overpaid for my Hiram Bidhorn, my 1972 Puerto Rican sticker Hiram Bidhorn. You know, in the past, it sold for less than $100, and I ended up paying I think 120 for mine or 125 for mine in a lower grade than the one that sold for more money. Um, you know what I mean? Like the one that was in a higher grade sold for less than 100, and it was like a PSA 8, and I bought a PSA 4, and I paid like 120 for mine. But it's because I want the card. I don't care about the monetary value. It's like it doesn't matter. It's like there's an importance to owning that particular card for me, and I think people, I don't know, lose the vision. And I guess we get caught up in the hype too, man, of YouTube. Caught up in the hype of what everybody else is doing. And as much as we say that we can't stand Jeff Wilson and we can't stand this guy or that guy, it's like, yo, we still follow the same trends because we talk about the same topics. You know what I mean? They talk about the same topics. They talk about the same thing about what the value of the card is and it's like, man, at the end of the day, who cares what it's worth? You know what I mean? Are you happy? When you purchase that, I was watching Sammy Thunder's video today, and he was like showing off 5 cards that would never leave his collection or something like that. And he was talking about the Mathewson that he bought, for like $3,000 or whatever. Hey, if you happy with that, and you got the card that you wanted, praise God, bro. Yo, you got it. That's the one you wanted. You know what I mean? And it's like, who am I to judge him or be like, oh, that card ain't worth that, or he overpaid, or he did. Listen, sometimes we overpay for the cards we want. You know what I mean? I'm over here paying $100 for cards that are worth $20 because I really want them in my collection. And the reason why is because they're hard to find. But even though they're not valuable, they're still hard to find. They're scarce. They're not like a rare breed. They're not rare in the sense that they're worth money, but they're scarce. They're hard to find. So I'm willing to pay the extra money if it's something that I really care about and want. And I don't know. It's just crazy. The hobby has become this thing where it's just like we went from collecting, being happy about getting a particular card, to now caring, what the value is. What can my wife get when I die? Man, I don't care what my wife could get when I die. I ain't gonna be here. You know what I mean? I care about when I'm here. Can I enjoy the card? Can I have it in my collection? Whether it's a 2 or whether it's a 10, I don't care. As long as I own it. You know what I'm saying? Like, my wife is going to get all the other stuff that I got. Life insurance and 401ks or whatever I got going on. Is like, she's going to inherit that. So it's like, yo, you don't, if you're depending on your loved ones to get rich off of your cards, then, oh my Lord, you know what I mean? Then maybe the priorities are set in the wrong places. You know what I mean? And if you do care about that, then cool, man. More power to you. But I feel like it's being pushed down the throat about grading so much. It's like, after a while, it starts to get hard to find stuff to watch on YouTube. You know what I mean? It was kind of cool to see John P. Collects doing his 5 minutes, 5 cards, 5 minutes of every team that he's doing. I don't comment a lot on a lot of channels because I'm watching them on my TV. So while I'm staying busy doing things, you know what I mean? So a lot of times I don't get to comment on it. Like I saw Sammy Thunder's video today. I saw Mangini's video today. And, you know, just watching some of these things. There was somebody else that I watched that I thought was a cool video too. Oh, Mr. Fisher Bike, when he like pulling something out of the hat, and he's like, "Oh, okay, we're gonna show these vintage cards," and you know, and it's creative. It's something different, and that was kind of why I started doing the If I Could Only Have One, because I wanted to be able to bring something that was different and unique, try to be unique, to offer something to the hobby, because it's like, what can we offer to the hobby? You know, besides talking about hobby news, besides talking about grading every video and all that. And I know I'm doing that right now, but I'm just kind of laying out my thoughts on video, expressing my thoughts to the community, because maybe there's other people that think the way I do or feel the way I do, and maybe they don't have a channel to express their thoughts and their feelings. But you know, grading, it has its place in the hobby, 100%. But you know, it shouldn't replace the original passion for the hobby. It shouldn't replace that. You know, the nostalgia, the history of it, and the love of the sport. You know what I mean? We collect these cards because we love baseball. We love the players. There's so many people that I see on that are collectors right now, and they're collecting vintage, and they don't care nothing about modern, right? That don't even watch the game anymore. They only care about collecting the old school stuff. And I don't know if they're doing it because they think it's just cool and they want to make videos about collecting cool cards, of vintage cards, but they don't even watch the sport anymore. And I'm like, if you're a baseball fan, how are you not still watching the game? You know, how are you not still watching the new players that are coming up? Because at one point back in the day, all those players were rookies. You know what I mean? And people saw them come up in the league. And, you know, to me, it's about the passion for and the love for the game. I played the sport when I was a kid. Matter of fact, that's a Little League picture of me when I was a kid. You know, I love the sport of baseball. It was the first sport I ever learned how to play. My dad taught me since I was a kid, since I was like 2 years old, picking up a baseball and throwing it at him and playing catch with him. And him teaching me how to hit, how to catch, how to throw. You know, and, you know, I became a Yankee fan because of my dad. You know, my dad was a big Mickey Mantle fan when he was growing up as a kid. And, you know, when I was growing up as a kid, he was a diehard Yankee fan. You know, and I would watch the Yankees play because of him. And then I fell in love with the game. I fell in love with the Yankees. And at that time, when I was growing up in the early 80s, you know, Don Mattingly was the guy, Willie Randolph. And then we ended up getting Ricky Henderson and Dave Winfield. And I was just like, man, we got a squad, but our pitching sucked. You know what I mean? But, you know, it's just that, I don't know. I just feel that everything about it right now, the psychological part about it, you know, the gambling part about it, you know, with the breakers and this and that, and it's just like, this hobby is off the hook, man. It's crazy. But I think you could tell who has a genuine love for the sport, and who's just in it for the money. And, you know, Mangini was asking, are there any collectors out there? And I just want to let them know, yes, there's a lot of collectors out there still, you know. And whether you collect autographs or whether you collect a team or you collect a player or whatever it is, you know, just have fun doing it, man. Just have fun doing it. And if you overpay for a card, But it's a card you wanted, so what? That's what you wanted. And Mike, Baseball Collector, made a good point on the Four Collectors thing the other day when he was talking to Greg. And he told him, he says, you know, there's no one to blame but yourself if you buy a card that you feel is not going to sell for more in the future. You know, if your intention is to eventually sell it off, then why are you going to buy a card at a lower grade? Right? Because it's up to you to make the choice as the collector. If you really care about the investment aspect of your collection and what it's going to be worth in the future, then don't be like, oh, I'm going to buy this 3, but it really looks like a 7, but I'm not going to be able to sell it for 7 prices. Then why the hell you buy it for? Don't buy it. Wait till you get a 7 that you like. You know, and I made that mistake. I bought cards where I kind of rushed into it because I wanted to get the card. And then after I got it, I'm like, man, I should have waited a little longer and just keep looking until I found the perfect card that I want. You know, that way you're not in that predicament that you having a card that you felt that maybe you could have gotten it a little bit better condition and that it was maybe a little more centered that you wanted. You know, I think at the end of the day, we make the ultimate decision to pull the trigger on the price, right? Or on a card. And if we buy it with the thought process of, oh, it looks way better than a 4, I'm going to get it. Cool. Because I got a lot of cards that I've bought that are, you know, I feel maybe are undergraded. But I didn't buy them with the intention that, oh, when I sell it, it's going to sell for more than a 4 because, you know, it looks like a 6. No, I bought it with the intention of this card looks great, it looks amazing, and it's in my wall. It's in my collection. It's in my binder. It's wherever. You know, I collect all kinds of things. You know what I mean? I collect, you know, graded cards. I collect ungraded cards, and I put them in my own slabs. I got cards in binders. You know what I mean? Like the top loaders. This is my thing. I got everything. You know what I'm saying? My Robbie Alomar collection. This whole book is all Roberto Alomars. You know, but, you know, don't lose the focus. You know, I think the whole thing of grading has become an obsession. And it's like, you know, I'm the type of dude that if I can afford, you know, let's say I can afford a $500 card, but I could get that $500 card for $300 at a lower grade, or even if it's raw, so that I could purchase 2 or 3 other cards that I want, I'm going to do that. Because I care about owning the card and not so much the condition of the card. And I shouldn't say the condition of the card, because the condition, I do care about conditions. I like to look at them. But I'm not going to be like, you know, overpaying for every card because I need it to be in a slab. I will gladly pay, you know, $20 for a raw card that's going for $100 in a slab all day, every day. It don't matter, because I know that the extra money that I get from that, I'll be able to use, you know what I mean, on more cards. So, you know, a lot of cards that I buy with the intention on keeping. I don't buy with the intention on selling. I got a bunch of Don Mattingly cards that are doubles and triples, and I don't plan on sending any of them. So I'm keeping them. So, but, you know, I don't know. These are my thoughts. You know, it's a pretty long video, but I love everybody in the hobby. I love watching the videos, but have fun collecting. Have fun. So take care. God bless. Be safe. Peace.